The 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. slot at home used to be something that she used to cherish. And she used to really look forward to it, and now she just has me in the side, oh my god, look at that. And then I make some connection to the fellowship, or I make some connection to some alumni stuff, and she's like, oh. But ever since I started watching it, so I think she's been watching it for a long time, so several seasons, and I was, every now and then I used to watch it, but I think once they became kind of a standard thing in the evenings, then I was kind of forced to, because we used to have dinner in front of it, and so I just used to just be around, I guess, and kept watching a few episodes. And initially it was interesting because the food looked really tasty, and I love food in general, and so it looked really cool. But then as more and more episodes, I started watching more and more episodes, I started seeing other layers, and those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you all today. And I'll start with the first thing that I saw. I'm going to share a quick video, and what you all have to do is make connections as you see fit between this and the fellowship or TFI. So yeah, go ahead. I have to coordinate this.
No, we have coordinate.
It's okay.
No. I have to.
Why?
Because I have to press it together.
Okay. We can go 1, 2, 3.
Never works.
Part of the excitement about MasterChef is the adventure of great home cooks coming in and really morphing into something very, very special. For so many contestants, MasterChef isn't the end of their journey, it's the start of their dream. This is what it's all about.
I've opened a cooking school, Julie's Place.
My brothers and I are set up a dessert bar. I now own a restaurant, which is what you're looking at, which is pretty cool.
I've written 5 books, I've got my own TV series.
I've started Sprout Cooking School and Health Studio.
Launched Hazy Butter. I've had 2 shows.
Had 2 restaurants.
Our little family cafe.
My own restaurant, Andre's Cucina and Polenta Bar.
My own cooking show, Everyday Gourmet. Ned's Kitchen.
3 different television shows.
10-piece Cowboy food band.
75% of people who come into this amazing kitchen go on and change their lives. That's an unheard of proportion.
This year, the standard of cooking is mind-blowing. And they're just getting better and better.
This year I'm surprised how creative the contestants are very early on. I've learned that the potential of these home cooks is almost limitless.
Last deadline for
There's a deadline coming out. Has anyone seen the Teach for India standard video on YouTube? That original? You could have just copied, put some PMs in there, put some other people in, and talk about their fellows the same way. Put me in there. 75% of alumni working in education, 75% of MasterChef contestants have gone on to change their lives. So literally 75%. They're all amateur, right? They're all I work in engineering, I do this, I do that, I clean something. And they all have set up these cafes and all. So a very strong, thriving alumni movement has been built. So the first part is this. They have a short-term and a long-term theory of change. I was like, wow, this is great. So there's a short, intense period of activity which is probably 6 months. So 6 months they're at institute because they live together. Is it 6 months? Is it longer?
6.
It's about 6 months at institute, all living together in one house. Every morning they go, do their thing, and then come home and so very intense. And then after that, all that life-changing stuff. So that's the first thing that struck me. The second one was, are you ready for a challenge? To give you all a sense of what is the nature of challenge here, check out this list. Okay, so this is week 1, week 2, week 3 on the left column. On this column here on the right, these are all the different kinds of tests that these guys have to go through continuously week on week. There is something called a mystery box challenge. Name is pretty clear. There's a big box that's lying there. They all come in, the box is removed, and they have to cook with those ingredients. So it's a mystery until they show up. Immunity challenge, they are fighting for something called an immunity pin, which means that if they get disqualified, they can come back in. So it basically protects them from being disqualified. They can use it and not lose. Team challenges, collective action, they come together. And so, for example, let's say Malacca Spice is doing a dinner with the MasterChef people. Then these guys would be in the back end working in teams of 4 to create the Malacca Spice menu for that night. And we'd go as guests and eat. And so they'd all be competing against one another in teams. So that's what a team challenge looks like. Pressure tests, there are all kinds of things. There's invention tests, some of them I don't even know, don't even remember what they are. But the point is, so this is the challenges, and then this list here are the guest chefs who come. Right, and these are like world-class chefs. So for example, one of my, the people I'm most fascinated by is this guy in blue named Heston Blumenthal.
Yeah.
And he's someone, Ria clearly knows who he is. He's someone who's, so people have heard of the Michelin stars that kind of rank restaurants and things like that. He's got a 3 Michelin star restaurant, 2 of those. And one of the best chefs. Why? Because Farzi Cafe, they mix around ingredients and so gastronomy. So he's one of the pioneering people in this area of gastronomy, where you're working at the level of the fundamental ingredients. And you look, so in Farzi Cafe, for example, at the end of the meal, I remember there was this foam kind of thing that came. Why is this funny? There was this foam, okay, this is the end of the meal, white foam comes to you. And so you eat the foam, it just melts in your mouth and you get the taste of pan. Like, it's fully like eating pan, but it's in white foam. Now that's the kind of work that gastronomy is about, mixing and matching ingredients. These are like world-class chefs. So again, I guess the question that came up in my mind was, like, what is, when we say, are you ready for a challenge? Our challenge is kind of like just continues over the 2 years. Right? It just flows, and people are. But is there like bouts of challenge where we're testing other kinds of things in ourselves, in people? That was something that emerged. I couldn't even think of one situation where there is actual an immunity print or these kinds of challenges which are like created for people as opposed to this thing that flows over 2 years with a classroom. I think Institute is a good place to actually try out stuff like this. Of course, this piece is huge, right? Like the best people in the world, the equivalent for us would be the best people doing education, best people doing social change work coming to Institute. We've had many leadership forums similar, except here they're in the act of doing and they're continuously being mentored by people. So it's a very different experience as opposed to a leadership forum where we're just listening to someone. So that was interesting. There's a huge challenge element, and when you actually see them, like at the end of these challenges, they are like just done. They're flat out. They've put so much of themselves into it, and there is the same emotions. Some of them are crying, some of them are just delirious with happiness. The same emotions that I've actually seen at EFI as well. So again, the source of all emotions is very similar. This one is very interesting. So there are certain things that are validated. What we do. So for example, long-term, short-term, those kinds of things. This one pushed me a lot. So leading with vision, the most standard thing that we are taught, how to do is start with vision and work backwards and plan backwards, right? So you take vision, break it down into goals, work backwards into actions, things like that. So interestingly, majority, like 95% of the chefs, actually, what they do is they start visualizing that dish as they start understanding what the challenge is, right? They start visualizing the end state. What will it look like? They have developed that process through practice, where they're saying, okay, this is what it will look like, and then they start crafting things in that direction. So that is one. But there was this one, I couldn't find the video because I couldn't remember which one it was, but it was this French chef. And one of the cool things that happens is that immunity challenge. The regular MasterChef contestants who are amateurs go up against a professional chef in competition. And so there was this French professional chef, and what she did is she didn't visualize the end state. She just went straight into just getting the ingredients and just going with certain intuition around how they combine. So basically she went with process, not with an end state. And then it was really interesting because, like, say it was 60 minutes long, around 30-40 minutes she was still like, I don't know what's going to come out. And the others were like, what? Because everyone else has an idea of what's going to happen. And then by the end of it, she had something and she got straight 10s from all the judges, like across the board, just completely knocked it out of the park. And the connection I made to just our stuff is, so the visualizing the end state is the backwards plan, mind the gap kind of thing. And then the process is, I did the example of the student council because Harsh mentioned it. So the student council, let's think what should we do by the end of the year? Let's break that down into goals. Let's break that down into, okay, month by month, what will we do? The other is a group of students, let's come together every week and let's talk about what needs to happen in this school. That's actually a completely valid way of doing things. And that's something that was really demonstrated there. It seems in a short term that this is weird, it's not going anywhere. But maybe in the long term, it builds the connections that are actually needed for change to happen. And so it's very interesting. A lot of community building actually happens through a focus on process and not a focus on the outcomes. A lot of project-based work happens through a focus on the outcomes and then planning backwards. So it's very interesting how that one French woman, I wish I had a video. The next one, which stood out, is just mastery. So as teachers continuously improving craft, technique, all of these things matter, and all the teachers in the room know the difference. It's very subtle, like what a teacher voice actually looks like, or what presence in a classroom. So first day at institute versus your presence after a year in a classroom, it's very subtle, it's very hard to talk about it. But your presence as a teacher actually changes. That's the improvement of technique. But some of the just extraordinary things. So I remember just being blown away, my dinner plate nearly like sliding off, because here you have, like, there's a balloon just floating. Okay, but it turns out that this is like an ice cream something. What was it?
Cone.
It was an ice cream cone, and that balloon is completely edible, and it's just like there, and it's actually not floating. It's actually stationary. It's stuck by a stick. There's a stick of some sugary thing, and that whole thing is manufactured. Now these kinds of things, they come up in certain challenges, and there are literally 200, 300 steps that people have to follow to get to this end state. Like literally, they are given the recipe. So that's how tough these are. These are not like you cook it, like just look at it and cook it. They actually give you 300 steps. So it's like you're teaching a lesson or something. Here are the 300 steps to be able to execute. Go ahead and execute it. So you have to go through that entire step, and most of them are not able to. Some of them are able to get to that kind of perfection. Another fantastic one involved this most bonkers dish ever. So this is this 18-year-old named Callum Smith on the show. Very young fellow, but extremely talented. He's known as the mini Heston Blumenthal because Heston is a big idol of his. And so I'm just gonna show what this guy did.
Tamara has just one dish of the day. I'm so happy for her. But now it comes down to Sarah and Callum. Sarah, she has gone white. You can see the look on her face. Maybe Sarah should have played that pen after all.
So Sarah and Callum, it comes down to the two of you. Sarah, you brought us a dish that was packed full of the flavours that we all love. And it was all meticulously balanced. And the three of us have never seen anything like that soy taro before. Absolutely brilliant. Callum, we've never had a contestant that's as brave, young, or creative as you. And the dish that we put up today was everything that the three of us have come to expect from you. We loved the texture of the ice cream, and we loved the candied salmon. We thought that it was inspiring. But you promised the flavours of roasted rice in that ice cream, and it just wasn't strong enough. So Callum, that's why, and it hurts to say it, but that's why you're going home.
So what happened there is Callum got eliminated, but when he was going through the creation, he said he's doing something with sushi. So making a sushi dish, and you saw that white stuff and all, he's making a sushi dessert. So the judges were like, oh my god, what are you even thinking? This is an elimination round and you're going with a sushi dessert, which makes no sense to us. They've never seen anything like it. And so there was this big newspaper headline where they had referred to it as the most bonkers dish. The most bonkers project here. And so he basically took that huge risk, created that wonderful like product there. You saw the white stuff, there was salmon in there. And what's crazy is after that inspired experience, he was eliminated. Because the only thing that matters is your performance today. It doesn't matter what potential, he's one of the up and coming 18-year-olds in the country, it doesn't matter. What matters is your performance today, which I was just like, that's so unfair. Like, what about potential? Like, because we're so taught to believe in this thing of potential, right? Fellowship selection mein potential dekhna hai, not performance on that day. Or classroom mein, like, you have to see, haan, aaj ka lesson theek nahi tha, but theek hai yaar, like last week was awesome. So there is some, but it just sets a different kind of bar when that whole quote of excellence is not an act but a habit and all of that. That really comes true or came true for me here, where every day, no matter how talented you are, the only thing that matters is what your output is, what your results are. So very high bar of excellence. So that was around mastery. And finally, there was this thing around change the world. And so this ties again to the heart of like any people development kind of thing, because MasterChef is developing people in a very significant, profound way. That what is it that actually develops people? Is it people coming in for a cause, working to change something outside, or is it something much more internal? Because all the MasterChef people just come to cook. Why do they come to cook? Because they love cooking. So it's a very internal thing as opposed to an external, like I want to save something or I want to eliminate education inequity or something. And so the last thing that I just wanted to leave you all with is the quote that all of you have already seen. But it truly again comes alive in this case, that they are all people who come alive through food, and that coming alive through food or coming alive through dance or coming alive through a classroom is fundamentally how things outside also actually might change. And so lots of interesting lessons here. I don't know what I'll do with all of this in my head right now, but maybe some inspiration will come in the work as well. With that, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.